So, Peter, I got asked in a Zoom last night whether homeopathy is essentially like green pharmacy. Obviously, a lot of people are hearing that the wellness industry, and sort of like natural therapies, perhaps, I guess that includes a lot of the functional medicine, certainly not just homeopathy, because we are not the cost factor that's contributing to this, but that they're saying big wellness is now 4 times worth the amount of money as big pharma. That's how much people are spending on big wellness. So I'm not sure exactly in that what they're tying into it, but in my opinion, homeopathy is the opposite of green pharmacy. I think that if I tell my honest truth, I'd probably annoy a lot of, naturopaths, nutritionists, and functional medicine and integrative doctors, because I believe a lot of their prescriptions and the people coming to me on, 7 different supplements, I believe that they are redundant when you have taken good homeopathic treatment. And so, to give an example of that just real quick, I had a case I signed off this week, and it was a case of a woman who had such severe constipation that she could only move her bowels every 7 to 10 days. Now, she had had chronic constipation her whole life, pretty much since birth, she said. But yeah, 25 years it had been that severe. So by day 7, she's feeling physically sick, can hardly eat, has to eat light. And that's the way she existed for 25 years. Now, in that time, the amount of colonoscopies, endoscopies, I can only imagine, the explorative things that people do, the amount of Movicol, the drugging, to try and use laxatives. But then you swing from that, when you give up on that, a lot of the time people then swing to the naturopaths, where they are prescribed an abundance often of herbs. Sometimes it's a quick fix, right? Sometimes it might be a bit of magnesium, they're really deficient, but often what we're finding is we are trading pharmaceutical medicine for green pharmacy. We're giving way too much. When this student took the case, she prescribed cifalinum in a Fibonacci homoccord, 2 drops under the tongue, 3 times a week. The patient immediately started moving her bowels 1 to 2 times a day. When I, do the math on the amount of money that people are spending in other therapies before they find us, the old, analogy, tried everything else, try homeopathy. If we were the first line, people would spend so much less money on their health. So what do you think about that?
True. So we need to make sure everyone knows what we mean by green pharmacy is where natural therapists are copying pharmaceutical prescribing, its symptomatic relief, without truly appreciating the holistic nature of health, the mind, body, spirit, diet, lifestyle, history, family history. That big combo is what we do at our best. We do holistic prescribing. So green pharmacy is a kind of a slighting term on the whitewashing of using natural therapies by natural therapists, or heck, even by integrated practitioners. Even doctors and nurses attempt to do naturopathy. They call it integrated medicine, and they just swap, instead of
And
serotonin,
SSRI.
SSRI, and they give hypericum, for St. John's wort for the mental improvement. Or instead of giving antibiotics, they try vitamin C intravenous. And it's not really that different. It's okay, it's a little more natural. It might be cheaper, less side effects, but it's not practicing medicine at its best. And I think truly that's what we do at our best.
Yeah, because in that, right, let's say we're looking at the SSRIs versus using St. John's wort. Obviously, St. John's wort as a herbal preparation, yes, it is used for depression. But in that, a lot of them are advising, take this St. John's wort ongoing, like throughout life. Now, in my opinion, and as homeopaths, our aim is that people should not be on anything chronic and ongoing, because if that is so, if that's what you are recommending, what you are admitting there is, I have not gotten to the root of the disturbance. I have not allowed your body to heal itself. Your brain, or, whatever it is that is maybe inflamed, or they'll say imbalanced. But in our opinion, we see so many rooted in these more spiritual, mental, and emotional dilemmas. This is the trauma. This is the part that only a homeopath can access. In that case of the cifalinum, what was actually found is that it was a miasmatic influence. It was that this woman's backstory, the health of her ancestors, physically, mentally, and emotionally, pointed starkly to the need for this remedy. And so, yes, she could have been on slippery elm. What
Cascara, senna, all the typical laxatives that still copycat what the pharmacist and the doctors were prescribing, but not that different because they were not addressing the root of the problem. And I have fixed so many chronic adult constipation problems with syphilinum when all the simple other alternatives that were more symptomatic had failed. Clearly they failed. And that's why they make it into, this one sounds like she's a 25-year-old, have chronic constipation all the time because they fail to appreciate the full holistic context of why is it so. And when we do that and we gather all this data, the big picture, it can take us 60, 90 minutes to have a first consultation. And we get this big picture and we say, oh, okay, and if it's been there for so long, as you say, nearly since birth, the implications are that maybe the root of the problem wasn't even in her own 25 years. It could have been an upstream blood relative, her parents, grandparents, who had an unresolved problem that passed on in a dynamic way, vitalistic way to the client, and then she has perpetuated an unresolved problem of her ancestors. And there's no way that Cascara or Senna will deal with that root of the problem. And that's why it
So
fails.
you
It
can
misses the
palliate,
point.
again, you can palliate at best using herbal supplements that will, really force the body into submission. You're trying to force the bowels to move. Whereas we just go one step further and we say, you must go back to the field. It is that deeper area. I feel like this needs a little disclaimer though, because we are lovers, of our friends in natural medicine, and there are there are naturopaths who do practice much more with the holism in mind. They are certainly not all on the green pharmacy train, but where we would say probably that we need to think about things. And, a lot of naturopaths, nutritionists, they are really focusing on that wholesome diet. The best of them are not giving you, the neurocalm and these things that are meant to, promote GABA or, specific neurotransmitter sort of production. That to me, that's venturing onto palliating, sort of slapping a band-aid on a deeper rooted issue. But in regards to, eating well and the nutraceuticals and the ability of the body to heal itself, that's where these guys really shine, right? Get all of your good things in balance. Your zinc, your copper. These are things that, guys, I would never go to a health food store and buy something like that off the shelf without having a consult with a naturopath. I think the way that naturopaths train, they are like on a doctor level because they need to know the liver, they need to make sure that they are not overwhelming our organs because they've got the crude doses. Luckily, we don't, delve into that. And so their level of knowledge, understanding is unreal. And a lot of my friends are naturopaths, but even still, I say this honestly, I don't believe anybody should be prescribed herbs or supplements for a condition until the homeopath has had its turn. Because, like example, Nat Mur, we see in so many people the manifestation of disease states when a grief happens. And so your Nat Mur patient, long history of lots of hurts and rejections and maybe bullying. And so their field starts to distort a little. And what's something that they're really prone to? Herpetic eruptions, let's say. All right. And so we're talking about herpes, cold sores. They might have it all around their face. They might have genital herpes. And then if you go to a naturopath, the naturopath would probably say, I want you to take lysine, right? Take the supplement lysine. It sort of acts, I guess, like an antiviral. It will suppress that. You will not have any more herpes outbreaks. Okay, beautiful. That's a step better than taking pharmaceutical antivirals. But again, the root of the issue was this psycho-spiritual dilemma that only we can touch. And when we give it to them, the herpes blasts out onto the skin. The grief is released, the person lets their walls down, their little heart can love again, and we help them in their totality. And so that's the message that I would love for people to know. But it is true that all the homeopathy in the world cannot outdo an unhealthy lifestyle. And that's where these, like the herbalists, and of course, there would be people who would say, but in our herbs, they also have the vibrating frequency. And I would say that and the synergism of using herbs in the way that a lot of the most phenomenal herbalists and naturopaths do, yes, I believe that they could replicate some of that energetics. It's just I am. I'm extremely biased in the way of homeopathy because I also used to have infertility, people who would come to me and they were on a laundry list of supplements to get them pregnant. Thousands, like tens of thousands of dollars. And it could not come close to what I could do with, my $20 little bottles. That was all it took, you know. So yeah, that's why I want to bring the information like forward on that. But in terms of Remedy Academy, in terms of cases, I've been mind blown. I've been signing off probably as many as you. I think we're almost par on par for case sign offs. What are you finding? Are there any cases that stand out for you?
Well, yes, students have to do 10 initial cases with at least 2 follow-ups, so over 570 students. You can see that's
17,000.
17,000 cases or interviews will be signing off by the time they graduate in November. I mean, I've seen, I don't know, so many cases, but it's just some recent ones I saw this week that are memorable. I'll tell you one. The student took the case. I supervised the student, so I authorized a prescription, and she presented this case. It was a case presenting with a particular peculiar type of vertigo, an ear disturbance in an adult male, but he'd had a history of ear issues from his youth. He'd had surgical procedures, blocked ears, so the ears were his prone part. Now, at the time of causation of the beginning of this vertigo, his ears weren't doing anything particularly problematic, but his life was particularly problematic. And I think that's what precipitated an historical weakness in his ears to precipitate this bizarre vertigo. So there was no obvious short-term causation scenario other than stepping back and seeing his life, because his life before causation was living in a war zone, came from Lebanon, and they're fighting with Israel and all sorts of disturbing, bombs, distress, grave distress, up until he left Lebanon and went and studied overseas. He was in London, and he was having the time of his life, watching soccer games, enjoying his master's program. Great life, heaven and hell. And it's that dichotomy that led the stress to go and precipitate an ear problem. So this was the issue between him being sober and depressed and morose and war-torn, and elated and enjoying and vibrant in the two dichotomy. Opium, Papaver somniferum is the prescription,
Mm.
because there's this dichotomy between how he's torn between heaven and hell.
Interesting. And what happened upon the prescription of opium? What
We
did
yet
he
to see.
report back?
We
Yeah.
haven't seen it last week, so
Mm.
the students prescribed it. I'll be getting some feedback, but I expect him to find some resolve between this dichotomy of his life between Lebanon and London,
Mm.
and he'll recover, and his ears will improve as well, I expect.
I love that. I had a case, so my only other case that came from Lebanon was actually, it was two girls. Now they were living in the Middle East, but their family had moved there from Lebanon. And the girls had severe and crippling gut issues. So one had opened, a gluten-free cafe. They were the most gorgeous girls. The first one was a fertility consult, and then she referred her cousin. And in that, trying to understand what is the reason for this full-on pathology with the gut. What's going on there? Is it that the microbiome is out of balance? Do we have a history of taking too many antibiotics? No. And so as we go through, it's like, this is a bit of a mystery. I wonder what's going on there. And I found out that their mums actually were in bunkers in Lebanon when bombs were going off. And so naturally, I was led to,
Opium,
well, no, actually, go another one.
aconite,
Go one more.
arginine.
Yes, Argentum. And it was so interesting to me. Now, what tipped it off for me, sorry, I didn't give you this clue, is that one of the girls, she actually started having these episodes. So if she would go even into the supermarket, this sort of panic and sweat, and it was her fear of fainting that actually really made me think, oh, this is an Arginette. Why are you acting in the supermarket, with her, oh my gosh, what's happening? She was literally reacting as if a bomb had gone off when she was just doing her grocery shopping. She's panicking and panic attack. And the Arginette was phenomenal. And yeah, so the nature of that, transgenerational coming down.
Well, I want to tell you an arginate case I just saw again, another excellent student presenting to me this last week, about a male who was so on the edge all the time. he couldn't even sleep. He would wake hourly, jolting out of bed, anticipating he couldn't sleep a long period of time, so he was waking at 3 a.m. But even in the daytime, he was nervous and anxious and had hot sweats and was frequently urinating with constant lifelong anxiety for no seemingly good reason. He had a hot body, which is the typical thermal of an Argentum nitricum: hot body, hot sweats, anxiety, or
Crave
sleeplessness,
sugar
crave
hugely.
sugar, diarrhea, constant bloating, big, pregnant abdomen all the time, and prescription of Argentum nitricum in a WHB. We expect him to do really well really soon.
Mm. And in that, with the stomach stuff, that patient that I was just talking about with the Argnet, another thing that she had said was, and it was around school, she could remember in school, and it was that performance anxiety that is absolutely classic of Argnet. And what she said to me is, I remember this math teacher, and she would put me on the spot, and she said, before every maths class, I would throw up. Now, I see, yeah, Argnet as obviously more intense, slightly more erratic, more sometimes neurotic than our arsenicum album. You can have your worrywart arsenicum album, but your Argnet can have more of the claustrophobia, the not wanting to leave the home for that real panic kind of fear. People who fear vomiting and develop a severe phobia around it. Surprising number of people actually have that. And yeah, it's like to them, you think that sensation of a bomb going off, right? This absolute fear and panic. That is actually how some people respond to the thought of, I'm going to throw up. It feels like they're going to die. And yeah, homeopathy and recalibrating that's so very powerful, but
That's
I
it.
love it.
That's what we do. We see the big picture. We understand all the cause and effects. We see it in their lifetime and even their ancestors' lifetimes and the impact of that, as well as the environment, diet, and lifestyle. All of those factors, the meteorological, geological factors as well. And we say, oh, okay, I get the big picture. Yes, it requires big thinking to appreciate the big picture because it's not just symptomatic. Oh, I'm just going to go and give you an SSRI for your anxiety. No, we see how it is, why it is, what it is. It makes sense to us, which is why practicing as a homeopath is so fulfilling because we can truly appreciate a client. This is why they frequently might cry or laugh in front of us. Why they say, "Oh, now it makes sense to me. You're the first person who's ever listened to my whole story, and yes, it makes more sense to me now than ever."
I tell you, I was doing a consult with an orthopedic surgeon from the UK last week. He was one of the highest level orthopedic surgeons like in the state, very well known, work on the politicians, the celebrities. And we finished the consult. We've gone through his whole life, his whole history. He's constantly telling me like, well, this is too much information, but here you go. And at the end of that, he said, wow, he goes, look, this has been bloody fantastic. He said, but is this normal? He says, well, is this actually what you do? Would you actually ask people these questions? And I said, this is all I do. This is all I do. I sit down for 90 minutes and I want to know it all. Because how can I understand you otherwise? How can I understand why, you've got these exact symptoms? And so I can't wait. I've sent his remedies off, but it was only last week. So he's going to be mind blown. I said, oh, we got a spot in the course for you when you decide that this is what you really want to do.
But isn't it so fulfilling for you and I and all our students and colleagues who are homeopaths to have the opportunity to truly understand a client? I mean, it's a bit indulgent to have 90 minutes, but to have an opportunity to figure it out and follow your curiosity and answer the genius of the case. Why is it so? Some sort of summary at the end of explaining it in, a couple of sentences. This is the reason why all of this has happened and makes sense, and we know it, and then we can translate from that understanding of the client to our understanding of materia medica and all our remedies, and choose even just one in an optimum dose, taken as a few drops, maybe a few times a day for a few days, and it makes everything happen. The self correction, the self healing. Not that the remedies are healing, they are facilitators of that self healing journey. The direction of cure comes true, old unresolved problems come back. The sequence of events from above down, inside out, more important to lesser important. All that comes true, and we go, wow, that's practicing medicine. I am so grateful to be involved in homeopathy because I believe I'm practicing medicine to the fullest capacity of my being.
I love it. I love it. I want to ask you one last question. When we set out to create this course, I guess you probably didn't forward think as much, oh, what will the students be like when they graduate? I guess I'm just going to straight out put words in your mouth, but have these students exceeded your expectations for what we could teach them and they could walk away with? And we've obviously watched 30 cases for them each. Have they surprised you?
They have. They have been the best cohort of students I've had anything to do with, and I've been doing this since 1990, so that's
Nearly 30 years.
35
Oh,
years
wow.
now. And, I've always given my best to all my students forever, but it's with this new curricula that we've come up with this apprenticeship style, with this level of supervision, the spiral curriculum, all of the things, all our guest lecturers, all the blood, sweat, and tears we've put into it as well, all our supervision work. We have taken someone who might have been, a carpenter or a hairdresser or whatever they were
Mums.
before,
Mums, lots and lots of mums.
ex-nurses, we got a few doctors and pharmacists as well, and within the short period of 2 years, we have turned out magnificent physicians practicing homeopathy.
I have been receiving cases, the last year, and the students will be, I'm receiving the case. They're telling me everything that's happened in this person's life. Now, as we get to the bottom, I already know, and I've written down, this is what I would prescribe if it was my patient. Now I want to know what the student would prescribe, and the number of them who, even when I have picked something so obscure and I think I'm such a little genius because I can see this little pattern here and I've seen this before and I recognize this. And when they land on the same prescription, often it may be a dual prescription, right, where they've even picked the 2 remedies that I would do. Or they say to me, I would do thioumetarhinum in 1 bottle and do this, and then I would clear this. And I think to myself, my goodness, you have really spent a lot of time around me and us.
Yes.
Because I feel like
Yeah.
we're really par and par now. Yep.
I'd say maybe 98% of the cases I've seen and observed and signed off on, they have done what I would have done.
Oh, it's
I can only think
insane.
of a couple of times, less than 5 cases, maybe 2 or 3 cases, I've actually had to help a student change their mind, and they've agreed
Yeah,
with the full discussion and
I
assistance
agree.
of their colleagues to something else than what they presented. But that's rare.
Yeah,
98% of the time, I'm in agreement, and their students agree, their colleagues agree,
yeah.
supervisors agree. So they're spot on. They're
And
doing excellent
last
outcomes.
question, uh, how many cases, what percentage of cases do you think that you are seeing when the students come back with their follow-up and they're reporting everything that happened from the remedy? How often are you seeing case progression and movement?
Oh.
How often is someone come back and saying, that didn't do anything?
We're talking about 17,000 sign-offs we will have done. Only about 2.
2% you
No,
think
no,
have had
no,
no
2
movement?
cases out of
0 movement?
17,000 cases have there been no movement within 2 prescriptions
Mm.
after all their good efforts. So that's less than a 0.1%
0
fail
movement.
rate. So,
Mm.
I mean, I used to talk about a 90%, more than a 90% success rate, but that was being conservative. And our students are now doing as well as you and me. They're getting much more than a 90% success rate. I'd say, if I dare, 99%
In
success.
terms of positive movement,
Movement.
that is
Movement.
important to discern, though.
Yes.
It's not that the person's come in with
No.
endometriosis and that's successful. We're talking positive movement. We're talking changes in the physical, mental, or emotional sphere
Yes.
for that person, stepping them towards health, even if incremental, even if small.
Right.
You flag that as a
Because-
yes, you're going in the right direction.
Because it's easier to define what a fail is, because if everything else is success, a fail would be no
Nothing.
movement at all. So if that's a fail, 99% of all the other cases are moving forward with about 2 cases out of 17,000 that didn't move
That you
at
saw.
all so far with 2 prescriptions. But,
Yeah.
I'm sure with some applications, some tweaking, we could probably get them moving forward. So look, that's pretty bold, but we're getting
Yeah.
a lot of good movement in our clients. I mean, some clients, they're going to
Phenomenal.
take years to get them to the end point of discharge. I'm treating a client for 10 years. Probably my longest consistent client is taking a remedy every day for 10 years and still doing well in her journey. But, we have to make it boundaries for our clients, our students. So that's why we said an initial consultation and 2 follow-ups. And even in that relatively short time, we're seeing incredible movement of, I don't think we've even seen any simple cases. They're almost all complex, difficult, chronic, frequently adults and children, fertility cases, chronic. We see everything, but not simple.
Oh,
That's the
absolutely.
niche of homeopathy anyway.
Yeah.
We're experts in chronic disease. We do really well in acute and epidemic and prophylactic and all sorts of things, but probably our greatest niche is in chronic, complex,
Difficult cases.
typical cases, and we move them forward. That's the good news.
I love it. Amen. Thanks, Peter.